Queen Elizabeth II laid to rest. National Assembly to reconvene plenary today after 8 weeks of annual meeting.
And good morning, Nigeria. Today we continue our conversation on matters arising from after school.
As primary and post-primary schools resume nationwide for a new academic session 2022 to 2023, both parents and school administrators engaged in various activities to ensure smooth teaching and learning.
Well, according to key players who appeared on Good Morning Nigeria, that was last week, the resumption of schools for a new academic session, especially in these times, is usually, they say, a very challenging one for parents.
And obviously, the reason is not far-fetched. The major one is the school fees, in addition to other financial commitments being charged by school authorities, especially the private ones.
No question about that. Now, some of the guests who appeared in the first part of our conversation said the tuition fees, for instance, for federal unity colleges are reasonable, but however complained of what they refer to as hidden charges being imposed by individual school authorities, and they describe such hidden charges as excessive.
Well, they, however, emphasized the need for the Federal Minister of Education to harmonize payments of sundry matters, just like school fees among the unity colleges, and called on school authorities to carry parents along in decision-making pertaining to running of the institutions. And I guess that's why we have a Parent-Teacher Association.
Unfortunately, that's in some of the instances, PTAs are not very effective.
Exactly.
Yes, and that's part of the complaints that was raised with regard to the federal unity colleges, that there used to be an umbrella PTA for the unity colleges across the country, but that was then disbanded, and now they have
each decisions.
Yeah, but now each school has its own PTA, and there is no interaction between and among other PTAs. Now, a security expert and a PTA executive, this time for a private school, Dr. Hassan Sadiq, said private schools are capitalizing on the decadence in the public schools to charge exorbitant fees, which a proprietor of a private institution, Mrs. Olushola Bankole, described as rather inappropriate.
Yes, Mrs. Bankole said 70% of private schools in the country are local and cheaper than public ones, as they are meant to bridge the gap in education, even though they are substandard among them. As a matter of fact, I had thought that she would say that that public schools charge higher. Exactly, they are meant to bridge that gap, but then some people are cashing in on that to, in fact, it's not money. At a point, some people are paying in dollars. Some schools are charging in dollars in this country.
Well, the guests complained about failure of some private schools to adhere to regulations, and the lack of monitoring and supervision by the Ministry of Education to ensure quality is, of course, giving that enabler, as it were, to some private schools to cut corners.
They, however, advocated the establishment of a bank for education to provide facilities for private schools to enable them make their institutions appealing for teaching and learning.
Well, the reason for the call for a bank of education is that some private schools, of course, are having to take loans to run the schools, and those loans are at commercial rates taken from commercial banks, and nothing less than 20-25% in some cases, according to them. That's the interest rate factor that they have to pay. Now, as we continue our conversation on back to school matters arising, what is the impact of inflation on parents? That's to say, on the cost, of course, of getting their kids back to school. And why do private schools increase their fees at will, oftentimes without engaging the PTAs? It's Good Morning Nigeria, the second edition for the week. I'm Kingsley Osadolo, and I thank you for tuning in to our program.
Hello, I'm Kieran Umar. You're welcome to our show, coming to you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. And of course, we'll bring you our complimentary segments as usual. For now, let's join Tessie Omeri, who has the morning and news highlights. Hello, Tessie.
Hello, Kieran and Kingsley. Good morning, Nigerians, and here is the morning news. Queen Elizabeth II's coffin has been lowered into the royal vault in St. George's Chapel on the grounds of Windsor Castle. During the communal service, the imperial state crown and sceptre from the Queen's coffin before it was lowered into the royal vault, while Lord Chamberlain, the most senior member of the royal household, symbolically broke his wand of office and placed it on her coffin.
People of loving service are rare in any walk of life. Leaders of loving service are still rarer. But in all cases, those who serve will be loved and remembered when those who cling to power and privileges are long forgotten.
The coming together of leaders from different parts of the world to celebrate the life of late Queen Elizabeth II and attended her funeral is a show of solidarity and goodwill by people from various backgrounds and a statement to the Brotherhood of Nations. Professor Oshibanjo stated this in London during a media chat with journalists after attending the state funeral service of Queen Elizabeth II at Westminster's Abbey.
This has truly been, and I think it's a testament to the sort of person the Queen was. Life and death brought people together, and I think perhaps even more so in death. So for countries like ours, for Nigeria and for the Commonwealth, I think this has been very ennobling, very strengthening, and I'm sure that the King Charles himself felt somewhat, not just the honor of having so many people come by, but also the reassurance that there is a brotherhood across the world, and that the Commonwealth remains strong.
Ahead of the formal opening of the general debate at the 77th session of the United Nations General Assembly in New York, President Muhammadu Buhari has held a strategic meeting with key members of the Nigerian delegation towards achieving a successful outing.
Nigeria has vast opportunities, but there are challenges which have been hindering and hampering those opportunities. So this is a platform for Nigeria to then talk to global CEOs, business leaders, and tell them these and these and these are the things you can do with our country. So it's an opportunity for Nigeria to make a good harvest.
President Muhammadu Buhari will on Friday, 23rd September 2022, launch Nigeria's Integrated National Financing Framework, INFF, for sustainable development on the margins of the 77th session of the United Nations General Assembly under 77 in New York. Proposed within the broader Addis Ababa Action Agenda, the Integrated National Financing Framework, INFF, is a planning and delivery tool to finance sustainable development at the national level. The IMF will help policymakers lay out a strategy to increase investments for sustainable development, manage financial and non-financial risks, and ultimately achieve sustainable development priorities. While a country's national development plan spells out what needs to be financed, the IMF shows how it will be financed and implemented. For Nigeria, the IMF is also expected to help in the recovery from the effects of COVID-19 pandemic, as well as help address lack of an integrated approach to financing SDGs, which has been a key challenge to meeting the financing requirements, estimated at $100 billion over the next 10 years. Senate and House of Representatives are set to reconvene plenary today after 8 weeks of annual recess. The National Assembly is undergoing renovation. It is the first major renovation of the edifice since it was first put to use in 1998. The Senate and House of Representatives chambers used for plenary have been stripped bare.
State of the art. We will be, at the end of the day, be proud to have chambers that match the best standards all over the world. This is not for the benefit of even this 9th Assembly. It's for the benefit of the 10th Assembly.
On to legal matters, Justice Oluwatoyin Taiwo of Lagos State Special Offences Court, sitting in Ikeja, has sentenced Chukwu Dimemi Nwamadike, aka Evans, and a former soldier, Victor Aduba, to 21 years imprisonment without an optional fine. This followed their conviction for the 2014 kidnap of a businessman, Silvanus Ahamonu. Evans and his co-defendants were before the court on 4 counts of conspiracy, kidnapping, and unlawful possession of arms. Evans, however, still has outstanding cases before Justice Adedayo Akintoye, also of the same court. Besides the jail term, Justice Taiwo also convicted and sentenced them to another 5 years imprisonment, each on 2 other counts of conspiracy to commit the act and for being in unlawful possession of firearms. The National Industrial Court Abuja has fixed a ruling on the interlocutory injunction praying the court to compel the striking university lecturers to suspend their prolonged industrial action pending the determination of the substantive suit. The matter was filed by the Minister of Labour on behalf of the federal government.
Irreparable losses, unquantifiable damages that are being done to the educational sector, that while this matter is going on, that the court should restrain them at the moment, let students go back to school, let innocent students, millions of students who are not parties to this matter, go back to school. But again, as I said, our clients are most willing to have this strike called off today.
And that's the news for now. Good morning, Nigeria. Continue with Kieran and Kingsley after this break. Thanks for watching.
Alright, so still watching Good Morning Nigeria and NTA network service. Now we'll go business. Slow global oil demands envisaged over strong US dollar and likely increase in interest rate. Details with Aleka Abachi Ara on Business News.
Oil prices held steady in volatile tradings on Monday as traders balanced worries about tight supplies with fears that global demand could slow due to a strong US dollar and a possible large increase to interest rates. CNBC reports that central banks around the world are certain to increase borrowing costs this week to tame high inflation, and there's some risk of a full 1 percentage point rise by the US Federal Reserve. Brent crude for November last rose 66 cents to $92.01 a barrel, a 0.73% gain. US West Texas Intermediate for October rose 62 cents to $85.73 per barrel. Let's take a look at Monday tradings on the floor of the exchange. With business news, Alika Okonachi, Arua.
Thank you very much, Alika Okonachi Arua, for the business news package on Good Morning Nigeria. Up next, newspaper review.
Alright, it's now time for newspaper review, and we have a number of papers here to review this morning. There are 3 papers to resume this morning. That's the much time can allow us to do. So we begin with the Blueprint newspaper. Blueprint newspaper. Federal government spends 6.16 trillion naira on debt servicing in 16 months. Federal government spends 6.16 trillion on debt servicing in 16 months. All right. We also have NANS makes good threat, block airport over federal government as rift. NANS makes good threat, blocks airport over federal government as rift. All right. The listed there at Queen Elizabeth's burial. World stands still. King Charles fights back tears. That's at the burial of his mother yesterday. With the 2 less, Joe Biden, Sean's fortune rose back in sitting plan. I have perfect relationship with Her Majesty, as according to Obasanjo. All that on page 6 of the Blueprint newspaper. The other stories. INEC debunks report of 7 million voters denied registration. We also have medication errors contribute over 3 million deaths annually, as according to the World Health Organization. On page 23, we have AKT and 2 others risk total darkness over BEDC ownership tussle. It's on page 23. On page 15, we have death toll in Jigawa flood rises to 92. Nasarawa lawmakers seek government's support. Alright, we also have at the bottom of the Blueprint, I paid 30 million ransom to rescue my priest from kidnappers. That's Bishop Kuka. The story is on page 5. Alright, Lagos impounds 40 2 for violating traffic laws. It's on page 9. And the final one here is court dismisses PDP seat seeking Tinubu Obi's disqualification. That's on page 8. All right, that's about the Blueprint.
Okay, let's also look at the front page of the Punch newspaper. And above the main flag of the paper, we have the following headlines. Nigeria's Q2 debt, the Q2 stands for second quarter debt, hits 42 trillion naira amid revenue crisis. Buhari to launch $100 billion SDG financing framework. National Assembly resumes 2023 budget and CGN confirmation top agenda. NDLEA seizes 194 billion naira cocaine in Lagos, arrests 5. And PDP, Atom wants Atiku, Fayose sues for peace. The list story, of course, is from out of London, Queen Elizabeth's funeral, which is the kicker for that. World leaders, over 4 billion audience, bid farewell. Truss, Boris Johnson, blood, 4 other ex-prime ministers pay last respects. Obasanjo eulogizes late queen, says she carried herself with dignity. Look forward to a prosperous reign, Oshibajo tells King Charles III. And you can see from the photographs on the front page there, particularly the third photograph, lower right, you see former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson in the middle, and Vice President Yobi Oshibajo, who represented President Muhammadu Buhari, is to the right. The Prime Minister, the President of Pakistan, Dr. Arif Alvi, is to the left. And then the pallbearers of the Queen's casket at the elaborate ceremonies yesterday. Customs selling impounded vehicles as scraps, auctioneers kick. Sons react as Evans, ex-soldier, bags 21 years. Corruption ruining Nigeria, fears subsidy, organized crime. That's according to Peter Obi.
All right. To Daily Trust newspaper, the Daily Trust from top to bottom. 2023 campaigns. Lawan, Baja, Jega, Kuka, caution against hate speech. That's on page 25. Queen Elizabeth's funeral testament to brotherhood among nations. As according to Oshibajo, Nigeria's vice president, is on page 26. Bandits kill 4 children, abduct 16 others in fresh Niger attack. You can get details of that on page 4. Now, the lead story of Daily Trust this morning: ASU strike, federal government under pressure as students ground Lagos airport. 3 riders to that. Domestic foreign airlines suffer delays. Bajabiamila meets Adamu ASU leaders today. Court rules on government suit tomorrow. Alright, the photo story is, of course, the students protest in Lagos yesterday. Now, below that, we have federal government considers pay rise for workers over inflation on page 7. A Van school defendant sentenced to 21-year jail for kidnapping. That's on 1 count, we are told. Now, NDLEA seizes 193 billion naira worth of cocaine in Lagos. Arrests 4 barons. Crystal also read that on the Punch newspaper. Now, disquiet over selection of core investor for Nigeria Air. It's on page 19.
All right, in the very many interesting stories for us to look at this morning, Kieran. Yeah. But let the charity begin with us at home, because Queen Elizabeth's story, we'll talk about that. Students who are protesting the prolonged ASU strike, shutting down the Lagos airport. They had earlier, of course, barricaded Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, and they say they will continue the barricade of a number of public facilities across the country. Let me not say that I have no quarrel with barricading the Lagos airport for those who are flying or those who are traveling. But let's take a look at this. When you know the configuration of the Lagos airport, before Lagos airport at Ikeja on Bank Anthony Way, there is a hospital. That hospital also incorporates a maternity ward. And that hospital is a teaching hospital run by the Lagos State University. Once you have a traffic gridlock on that Bank Anthony Way, stretching from the airport straight down to Maryland, anything could happen. So if there was an emergency yesterday, a patient who is being rushed to the hospital for emergency, you and I have no way of knowing if there's any such emergency. And that patient could very well be a relative of one of those who are protesting. To say, look, this strike is taking too long for us to resolve. I know that Fashola, the Minister of Works, had earlier condemned the blockade of the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, saying that, look, they were right to protest. That does not mean you should impede on the rights of others, or free movement, for instance, and because a number of persons took on him, and so on and so forth. But look at it from this perspective. We're just saying, within the vicinity of the airport, you have a teaching hospital, you have a maternity ward, the Bank Anthony hospital. So if there was an emergency yesterday, and everybody knows the traffic situation in Lagos, how do you manage that?
It's not just an emergency. Yes. There could be fatal accident, on the road or what have you. And it's needlessly talking about, what could have called during that protest. But the idea is that, look, these young men are frustrated. You can imagine you when you were in your school days, for 6 months or more, you not go to school. I mean, you get frustrated, I'm not saying they are right or doing that, but we are human beings, right? So they're taking even the risk. They can even lose their life in the process. Yet they came out. So that's the problem. So the nation, they want the nation to listen. They want the nation to feel their heartbeat. That this issue should be resolved. Whatever that it is, the only thing that we cannot change is death. Right. But when it comes to things that we can do practically or physically or in terms of intellectual things concerning school, we should be able to iron it out and devise a means of handling it. But for you to fail parallel and ground, then some people will say, look, let us rise and make a statement. And that could even affect other airports, not just Lagos international airports. So the earlier this issue is resolved, the better. Now we are learning that the Speaker of the House and of course the Chairman of APC and House will be meeting today.
That's fine. That's right. Okay, again, also on the prolonged strike, these are matters we have handled on Good Morning Nigeria. My chief concern has to do with the choice of the location. Exactly. To say because of the location of the airport and the teaching hospital, we never could tell what will happen. And there are instances where persons have lost their lives because help didn't come in good time. That's for that story. Now, for Queen Elizabeth II's funeral, there are of course many perspectives to all of that, but I just want to draw our attention once again to protocol, to order. Yesterday, you didn't find any big man or any big woman arriving late to say, oh, then we don't have a contingent of aides who are trying to clear the way for the big man who has arrived to take a seat. You had your seats allocated to you during the funeral service, and so there was nobody who came in at a time that the person wasn't supposed to have come in, who then disrupted it and aides are shifting chairs and so on and so forth. That's one. Secondly, even for our colleagues, how many cameras, technology that they used, obviously, but how many cameramen did you see clicking away, and then the ushers or whoever in charge will be telling them, no, shift, everybody clear. You saw the precision with which that went. And these are some of the things that we ought to learn from. To say, look, when you say an event is for 9 o'clock and you are supposed to come with 1 or 2 persons, or you're not supposed to be more than 2 in your company, and your seats have been assigned to you, don't come there and overload the place, and then all of a sudden, the entire thing is upside. I think that's one of the key lessons you learn from events like this.
Proper organization. The British government deployed, thousands of policemen, who organized the protocol, and one particular man, I can't remember his name, I was responsible for that organization, and they made provision for all heads of states from Africa, Asia, Europe, and the Americas, so there was nothing like you missed your flight, or that you came late for obvious reasons and stuff like that, because exactly everything has been properly arranged and well executed during that yesterday's funeral. It was orderly in my sense of it.
Oh, yeah, that's right. The last story is of course Evans. We all know Evans, shall we say the popular or infamous kidnapper. He had earlier this year received a life sentence for the kidnap of a pharmacist in Lagos some years ago, and yesterday now he got 21 years along, of course, with his accomplice. So the life sentence is already on him, and then of course now he has 21 years, but those sentences will run concurrently. Probably some would say they are lucky, because this last kidnap incident, for which he's just been sentenced to 21 years, the kidnap victim was asked to pay a sum of $2 million before being released, and it was near the point of death. After the family had sold his properties, borrowed money left, right, and center, they have paid $420,000 to him. That Evans and his accomplices who retired or the former military personnel, before they now released the gentleman, $420,000 US that they had collected from him before he was released. Of course, the other pharmacist had an ordeal that he narrated in an interview that was widely published. I think it was in Vanguard newspaper in 2017 in the hands of Evans. So, well, some will say that he's lucky because there's no death penalty for kidnapping in Lagos. But in states where there is a death penalty, then ordinarily, if a person is being made for this, it goes straight away to the gallows.
I think that on that charge is unattended. I think these are those ones that are.
Those are the ones that there are murder charges. Exactly. They are also alleged to have murdered some policemen, murdered some other persons.
As a matter of fact, on his attack on one day, Anambra transport mogul, that he attacked. They keep his men in the process of doing that. So that's it. And maybe the guy who introduced the technology into kidnapping, who mastered, the artistry of stealing, and of course, kidnapping people. You stay in the place and use gadgets to, control his boys, and get some people trapped and, kidnapped.
Now the law has caught up with him.
Exactly.
And it's still catching up with him, Kira.
Exactly.
We have another copy we're going to take a look at before we call it time.
Yeah, the NDLEA, she's in, 193 billion naira worth of cocaine in Lagos. It's the highest ever in the history of drug seizure.
Well, congratulations one more time to NDLEA, but sometimes these numbers, I try to wrap my head around them. Who computes the value? I don't know. If I see cocaine, I will recognize it. If I see heroin, I can't recognize it. So I don't know how these values are computed.
We don't know what to do. They measure it in kilos and all of that. They want to value it. It's very simple for them because they're in it.
Right. Okay. Congratulations to them, Kira. Okay, so we call it time out for this super review segment. It's Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the NTA. We take a short break now. When we return, get ahead with back to school matters. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Now, to begin our conversation, let's take excerpts from the first part of our conversation. The excerpts are put together by our correspondent, Abdusalam Jibril.
There's never been any time, especially in September, like this, that parents shouldn't are assuming that it's easy, especially now that we know how the economy is. And I was here 2 years ago, and there's some things I said here also. But one of the challenges I'm having is that we keep on talking, keep on lamenting, keep on complaining, but it looks like nobody's there to help us. And we also want to say it again.
It's that mindset that private schools are very expensive. That is not correct at all. In FCT, we have an average of about 3,000. But let me explain. When I explain this, I think people get concerned and they go out there to find out, and they realize that I'm telling the truth. Majority of schools are local schools that are far cheaper than the public schools, including the FCT public schools. Oh yes, ma'am. We have 100 naira a day, 20 naira a day private schools, 10,000 naira school fees per term.
Where are they located?
They are all over town.
Private school take advantage of decadence in the government school. That is what we are paying for. That, okay, I'm taking my children to private school. You pay through your nose. You sit on them because the education systems are not monitoring them. I've asked several times, the FCT education department, do you know today how much the private school are collecting? What is the pay of the teachers? What are the allowance? The ministry is supposed to monitor. What do you charge? And what are you paying? What do you take home?
Public schools are free. They are free. And any charges that you see coming up are charges that the PTAs agreed on themselves. I have problems with the private schools. One, they don't agree with us on one. Inspection, school census. In fact, even some of our regulations are blatantly flouted by the private schools.
All right, those were excerpts from the first part of our conversation on the program, and that was on Friday. And incidentally, today again, we have brought back Mrs. Olushola Bankole. Mrs. Olushola Bankole is the director of the Bankis Private School here in Abuja, and the immediate past chair of, shall we say, the Association of Private School Proprietors in Abuja. Mrs. Bankole, we're glad to have you again in the studios.
Thank you so much, sir. And welcome to all the viewers.
All right. And also joining us for today's conversation is an educationist and peace advocate, Dr. Philip Hayab. Dr. Hayab, glad to have you this morning.
Thank you for having me. Good morning, Nigeria.
We also would like to welcome Mr. Matthias Okoje. Mr. Matthias Okoje is a lawyer and an executive of the Parent Teachers Association of Bristol Academy in Karu, here in the Federal Capital Territory. I'm glad to have you this morning.
Thank you for having me. Good morning, Nigerians.
Here.
Okay, and also with us on this conversation from our Maiduguri studio is Engineer Lawan Abba Wakilbe. Engineer Wakilbe is Commissioner for Education, Borno State. Honorable Commissioner, good morning and welcome to our program.
Thank you for having me. Good morning, Nigeria.
And joining us via Zoom from Gusau is Abubakar Aliyu Maradun. He is the Executive Chairman, Zamfara State Universal Education Board. We are glad to have you this morning.
Thank you for having me on this program. Good morning, Nigeria.
All right. From Lagos, Chief Adeolu Ogumbanjo, Deputy National President, National Parents Teachers Association of Nigeria, NAPTAN. You are welcome to the program.
Good morning, Nigerians.
In a way, we have the Honorable Commissioner for Education. I wasn't privileged to be around when you had the first of the conversation, right?
That's right.
But as Commissioner for Education, I believe that he understands the challenges, with respect to when schools begin like this, when registrations and all of that, commences in NSC in the country. We're talking about issues arising from fees that are charged, especially by private owned schools, and there are some public schools as well. We're also talking about some hidden fees, charged that are not necessarily tuition fees and all of that. And the issue of teachers, again, qualified teachers, and of course, remuneration of teachers. So, it's holistic. Let's get your view of what it is like today in the country and what you are doing, particularly in Borno State in the education sector.
Well, thank you very much. Our situation is a bit different from the rest of Nigeria. We are just recovering from what is called education under emergency to our stabilization phase. First of all, let me start on the issue of fees and private schools. As part of our program in our stabilization phase, we have reviewed our guidelines for the operation and establishment of private schools in Borno State. The guideline was reviewed in September this year, 1st of September particularly. Now, page 6, article number 8 clearly stipulates in Borno State, if you want to review school fees, it has to be in full consultation with the PTA or the SBMC. Then same part 10 of that page states that every school must have a PTA or SBMC. So that is to check extortion on the part of private schools. When things like this happen and the PTA or the SBMC are not happy with that, they could seek arbitration from the Ministry of Education. On the part of the state schools are free. Nobody charges any fee in the state, and there are no hidden charges because we are just recovering. Most of our schools prior to now have been situated in the urban area. We are now trying to return most of them back to the rural area so that access could be created for schooling. As for unqualified teachers, we face that problem at the basic level, and His Excellency Professor Babagana Umar Zulum, Executive Governor of Borno State, initiated a competence test in December last year. And the results came out as follows. Out of the 17,400 teachers we have at LEA level, only 5,439 are qualified. 7,000 need further training. 3,800 and 3,800 thereabout are not qualified to teach. So what His Excellency did was to adopt the state level minimum wage for the LEA teachers that are qualified, while the 7,900 of them will be sent on further training in phases, while the rest of them who cannot teach would be sent to other duties in local government administration, so that it will ease up the LEA package, so that it will enable us employ very qualified teachers. As for our state schools, we don't have this problem of qualification. Our major challenge now is to get them back to where they were before the insurgency. Most of them, under the education phase, had to come into the urban areas to allow students who were enrolled to complete the schooling. Now that things are very stable and our rural areas are quite stable also, we intend to move them back so that the hundreds of thousands of internally displaced persons who have gone back to their host community as part of our resettlement effort will gain access to education.
Right. Thank you very much, Wakibe. We'll return to you in the course of the conversation. Now, let's go over to Gusau. That's the capital of Zamfara State, where we earlier introduced the chairman of the State Universal Basic Education Board. That's Abubakar Aliu Maradun. In a sense, Zamfara is similar to Borno, except that perhaps Zamfara is a more active scene in terms of banditry, kidnapping, and acts of terror. We do know that a number of locations have been evacuated, and of course, which would have included schools and residences of the inhabitants. Now, tell us, we're discussing back to school. Is Zamfara also going back to school? And if so, what are the issues?
Well, thank you very much for giving this opportunity to participate in this program. Zamfara State has been the devil with years and security problems. And ours, just like Borno, is on banditry. When this government came into power on May 29, 2019, Excellency, see the situation we met the stage, because most of our schools, especially in the rural areas, were closed due to activities of bandits. Only 2 schools within the urban areas are open. And so when His Excellency came, in his further speech, he promised to tackle the issue of insecurity and as well the issue of education, because to him all these problems of banditry that is bringing problems to us is as a result of illiteracy, because most of the bandits that were caught, if they were asked, they will say they can't read and they can't write. They don't have any form of education, both modern and religious. So His Excellency declared state of emergency in the state and kickstart activities to ensure that all our schools are open. And believe me or not, before his 100 days in office, most of the schools were open. And the list that were not open because the villages have been scattered and the people have been scattered, we have to make some arrangements for them to have the education elsewhere. And that is why then we introduce the issue of e-learning in through radios and televisions. And every day we subject these children to some lessons through radio, on radio for 15 minutes and the TV for 30 minutes. Starting from 8, on the radio we start from 8 to 8:15, 15 to 8:30, and on the TVs we start from 10 to 10:30 and 10:30 to 11. So you see how His Excellency the Governor Dr. Bello Muhammad Solomon Maradi he was very serious about this insecurity. And that is why he gave us all the support to ensure that all the schools were off. He has high concern on the children because, with the kidnapping that was done in Nigerian and also in Kaya, it has become very serious that the parents and guardians became disturbed. We also become disturbed. And so that is why His Excellency closed all the schools then. And the schools have been closed for quite a long time. People have been complaining that the schools have been closed, but the government is making arrangements to ensure that if the schools open, they conduct their learning in a very secured environment. So a situation room was established in the state capital. There are always security chief organs teach and showcase the security problem in the state all over. Then His Excellency also directed that the Ministry of Education should conduct a stakeholders meeting with all other stakeholders to ensure that our schools are safe. The very important Commissioner for Education, Honorable Zainab Gumi, directed us to also conduct some meeting and ensure that we establish security committees in all our schools, in all our wards, in all our ADCs, and in all our local governments. And that is what we did. So being the overseer of most of the schools, because most of the schools were monitored by SUBEB. That is the primary schools. We have more than 1,500 primary schools. We have also more than 300 JSS. And so we decided to call all stakeholders and invited security consultants that conducted security insights for them so as to be security conscious. So we established committees from the state, the local government, the ADT, towards, and also to schools. These schools are charged with the responsibility of monitoring security schools. And also relating, the schools relate with what?
All right. Abubakar Aliyu Maradun, Executive Chairman, Zamfara State Universal Education Board, who are going to return to you in the course of this program. For now, let's go to Lagos. Because I can understand the difficulty, in Zamfara and Maiduguri, for instance, because of the insecurity in the area. And besides that, the guiding philosophy of the terrorists in question is that Western education is evil, so to speak. So that's largely fighting against. And we can understand what you are going through. We're going to learn more from you as you make progress. For now, let's go to the Deputy National President of the National Parent Teachers Association of Nigeria, NAPTAN, and that's Chief Adolu Ugubanjo. All right, the role that parents play in our education circle is quite unique and formidable in the sense that the parents are involved in all manner of challenges concerning their wards or children's education. Now, we have heard from the excerpts of the previous edition of this program that discussed this topic when one of the guests was actually talking about the fact that in some schools parents are not even allowed to contribute to decisions taken by such schools, especially when it concerns financial matters, tuition fees and other fees. Some schools have even taken up the responsibility of providing uniforms, shoes, books, and whatever the child needs in school. I don't know how that is working. And I'm talking about private schools. Then in the public schools also have issues or challenges here and there. Now, children are going back to school. What are you envisaging, and what do you think should happen to ensure that these children go to school hitch-free, and of course parents are not carrying so much burden to pay school fees and other charges? What is it that PTA is experiencing across the nation?
Thank you very much. I must say that here in Lagos, where I reside, the private schools are having some sort of different ways to take care of their children, I mean, the students, while the public schools, for instance, you did say earlier that some parents are not allowed to contribute in view of the free education program of the state government. They normally, provide such things like what to sit on, I mean, desks, benches, and all that. Plus the fact that in some schools, they have books, which is in the schools, is being used in the schools. These are things that the state government have put in place in view of the free education program. So, to a large extent, parents are not just allowed to come and say, yes, I'm paying so amount for whatever services. But in the public space, in the private school area, it is just a situation where, of course, you want to pay for your school fees, for your students' school fees, and again, you also make sure that they are safe going to school through either provision of staff buses and all of that. But beyond that now is, hello? Right. Beyond that is the fact that the security agencies now should come to play. You and I know that we've got some scuffles, on the sea and all that with the Babington Ashaye schools in the past. About 3 brawls with kidnappers and all that in Lagos. Thank God this was about 3, 4, 5 years back. But right now, we need to ensure that the security personnel, particularly perhaps the police, the NSCDC, and sometimes the Nigerian Army may come to play in terms of ensuring that our schools are actually secure, because banditry, insurgency, and all that is everywhere. So we are afraid, and that is why we are looking at a situation where all the security agencies could come in, to further secure our schools.
Thank you very much, Chief Ogubanjo. We'll return to you presently in the course of the conversation. Now back to the studios here. Barrister Matthias Okoje, as we earlier introduced you, you were an executive of the PTA at Bristol Academy in Cairo, which is here in the Federal Capital Territory. It's a new academic session for parents. What are the concerns and expectations?
Well, prior to this time, the school had a meeting we had a PTA meeting, the ESCO, with the school authority. We met. The issue of school fees for the new session was taken into consideration. It was discussed. For the past 10 years, the school has not increased the school fees. The school fee of the school has not been increased. So it took us into confidence. And we had a kind of negotiated settlement, understanding. So eventually, it was decided this is what we are going to pay. I can assure you in all fairness that the school really showed commitment to education and not to exploit the parents. So they put those things in place, and it's then like within that period was the 20th anniversary of the school, and parents were happy and so excited to be contributors to the entire project. Now that the school is in session, we started last week, we are looking forward to a history educational session. We are looking forward to that. We do not envisage any change in what has been agreed, because as a parent, I have personally, to some extent, substantially met up with the fees. So, and I know most parents are doing that without grudging. So that is what I know about the school. Well, going by the inflationary trend is a challenge for every parent. We must consider that it's a challenge. But however, since we are determined for our children to have a good education, there can always be one or two ways of meeting up with it. And I know about the school, this particular school, you are not, they understand with parents as well. Not every parent can afford to pay at once. So they give that concession of you pay maybe 2 or 3 times within that term. The important is that you have to work to meet up before the end of the term. So they made that concession. So as I said, inflation is a general thing that is not, it doesn't apply to schools alone. It's in the system. So we just have to look for a way to manage and to still go on. That is what I think about it.
When you talk about some ways of meeting up school fees by parents, I just say, mile and that, because
you work harder.
No, some go borrowing. Some go borrowing. You need to know what parents are going through. Some go borrowing to pay school fees and what have you. And Mrs. Olusola Bankole, I watched your comment, on the previous edition of the program, where you are emphatically, saying that private schools charge less than public schools and what have you. You say 10,000 naira per term. I was wondering, is it a kindergarten school you're talking about? You say 10,000 naira a term, or is it a primary school you're talking about? What about uniform and the other uniform, the sandals, or canvas, as the case may be, and books and all that, I mean, we're parents, right? And we somehow pay school fees as well, for different categories of, students or pupils, as the case may be, right? So it's always crystal clear that private schools charge higher. But if you are saying that they have not really exceeded reasonability, in terms of what should be charged, that is totally different, So now that students are going back to school, I want to understand why, in some cases, some private schools negotiate school fees every term. Either you add, in fact, it's always adding. It's always adding. It has never reduced.
But usually every session.
Every session, you keep adding, and even in the course of study, I mean, within a term, some charges may arise. Some are charging for ICT. So you pay for ICT, we're going to give you network and what have you. Then you see pay tuition fee and have to pay a fee if you are living in school.
Development levy.
Development levy and
all right. So quickly to respond to you.
Yes.
It's difficult for people to understand what I shared the other time.
Yes.
Very difficult, but that is the truth.
Okay.
One thing that has come to stay is education is expensive. Very expensive. I was privileged to be part of the launching of the Korean Nigerian school that is around Airport Road. When they were that school costed the Korean government, the South Korean government, about $15 million to build. Yeah, and that is the range of some of our high-end schools in FCT or across the nation. If somebody is going to get a loan at the rate of say 25% interest rate to build, that person will charge 1 million per child per term, and it will take that person close to like 6-7 years before he will even break even to pay up the loan. I want us to look at it from that perspective. So we know, and then parents a lot of times complain, they shouldn't charge this. I think it is important. In so many cases, you also realize, as much as I'm always trying to be very real, the truth is we have schools that are not doing the right thing, both in public and in private sector. I think that's also the failure of our system as a nation. Our, value system is eroding, positive value system is eroding so fast that, so that's like a general thing. But when we come back to private schools, the truth is it's not easy for a lot of private school, owners to run. Somebody said the last time that is a failure of government. That's the truth. But we know that education is so critical to development in a country, such that you measure a country's progress or development by the education system. Yeah. And it's real everywhere, all across the world. And the point is, again, is if an individual is taking up the responsibility that, I want to provide education to those children in my environment and all of that, parents can decide. There are so many schools such that a parent can feel your fees is too high, I'll go to another school. Or in your school, you don't allow parents to have a say. I'll go to another school. There is, whatever. Instead of, making it look like, private schools are always a Shylock, there may be a very few, but the largest percentage, I'm reiterating, are low-cost schools. 10,000 naira, 15,000 naira for secondary school students as tuition fee. Of course, shoes, books, and all that are different. I'm talking about the tuition fee.
What about development levy?
Not many schools charge. There are very few schools that are charging development levy. And in any case, why not? If the parents agree, and it's for the development. When my child is in this school, it is also my responsibility to see that the school grow, to support the school to grow so that my child can be comfortable. If the government is providing, I went to a public school all my life. From primary, I never went to a nursery school. Maybe it wasn't popular during my time. But I went to a primary school, secondary school, university, public all the way. I wish our public schools are functional. If they are, some of these issue or dichotomy, public, private, in most countries, there are private schools everywhere. But one thing runs true. If the government is doing their best and parents see that public schools are good, but those that now want private schools for special, opportunities that are available there, will still take their children there. US, UK, UAE, everywhere there are private schools.
But somebody said that private schools refuse to be regulated or inspected, as the case may be. Because we used to have a inspectorate division in our ministry.
I don't agree with that, sir. In fact, a lot of times we are even having issues with, I think the mindset of, breathing it down on private schools is also a problem. See, the collaboration is what is important. We want to give quality education to the Nigerian child, and that's what all of us should work towards. Yes, regulation. I was saying the other day when the ES was mentioning that private schools are not willing to be you are the regulator. There are cases that we have written letters to say these schools are going against the whatever. For instance, there is calendar of academic calendar from the DQA under the Education Secretariat. There are schools that may not follow it. It's possible we have a little leverage depending on the school. You can write to them. If you have a good reason, they will give approval. But we see schools not following. And then those are the big schools that are beyond the law, let me say. But regular schools, the average schools, you see that we all are following. We are, when they come, we also need, there is an holistic reorganization that is required in the education sector, generally. Of course, the ones that are meant for private schools, we should take it, work on it, which we are doing consistently, like in FCT, NAPS, National Association of Proprietors of Private Schools, and there are a few other associations like that are working so hard. Because when the government, we had a town hall meeting with the Department for Quality Assurance last session, where they told us what they expect us to do. We also share our burdens and all of that. We expect that everybody should be conscious. It is for the sake of the children. And like I said, education is expensive. Nobody should expect that private schools will be cheap. But the truth is, a lot of private schools are running more like charity, just to offer something to the children, so that we don't throw too many children also out there. And then we're also offering employment to a lot of Nigerians. In FCT, I can give you a little data, say about 3 years ago, when the number of people we are taking out of the street to provide employment for. It may look like there are so many schools, there are some schools, let me say, that are not giving good, but the point is the situation in the country is like that. Regulation, yes, but when you come to regulate, don't begin to give us bill. That's what we are even saying. When some inspectors come, a school called me yesterday complaining that there was a letter from NC Civil Defense insisting that this school, you don't have police in your school, or you don't have a civil defense in your school guarding the children. And she was like, excuse me, even when we ask, do you give us? And then how many schools are policemen going to stay? And can we afford what it takes to have a police in the school? Many of us get private, security companies to be, on hand. And then they are saying they will close down the school. And I told her that, don't worry. The challenge is many of us are always jittery when we see something from government. Don't fret. Nobody can close down any school without due process. If they try it, just get across to...
Are there, for instance, on this subject matter of the civil defense writing to a private school, are they demanding that you engage civil defense officers to provide security? And if yes, are they attaching a fee to that?
Definitely.
What is the fee?
I don't know what the fee is for now. In fact, I asked the person to post it on our platform, the platform of proprietors, so that all of us can get to see other schools that have also been sent such letters, and then the association, the leaders will address such. But that's how it comes, little by little. They pick on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 schools, and then little by as those ones begin to fret, they respond to them, they give, and then they want to, breathe it down on private schools.
Make it standard. I think that this is the way Rent-A-Cop starts. Because the civil defense gets its remuneration from the public purse, and therefore it's supposed to provide public safety and security. So there will be no justification, I would imagine, for civil defense to write to any school to say you don't have security in this school. You should have, otherwise we will close you down. It is rather for them to say, look, you don't have, we are available to provide that. And if you are available, that's fine. It becomes part of your legal duty. Otherwise, the chief function of civil defense ordinarily is protection of critical national infrastructure. And we can include schools as part of critical national infrastructure.
But quickly, let me tell you, if you have not really done anything that has to do with the public, that requires some level of protection or level of security, that you're going to involve any uniformed organization, if you do that, of course, something goes for it. It's not for nothing. It's not.
No, we are talking about what is ideal. And we're talking about what should be normal. It is not elevating the abnormal to become the normal. Exactly. And now that this is incipient, this is when it should be stopped. Not to say, I don't know how much I'm going to bring to you. You say that, okay, for every civil defense man that comes, any civil defense officer that will deploy to you, this term is 100,000. The next term it will be 150,000. Those costs will be passed on to the parents.
That's why I was talking about. That is what happens. It's not as if it is right to do that, but that is what happens. In fact, it is traditional. It is wrong. What we are saying is that it should not happen exactly in the first place.
That's right.
But that's what is going on.
Okay. No. Don't say what is going on. Police, we don't know. They are trying to. That's the allegation now. They are trying to get easier to say that this insecurity as well as
in this incident. Yes.
So they just calculate the number of schools. The other day you told us about 3,000.
About 3,000.
Do you know what it is? The FCT 3,000 private schools. 3,000 private schools. Education secretary was saying 7,000 or thereabout. I'm not sure whatever the number. If you have 3,000, somebody will just sit down with a calculator. It becomes an IGR.
Oh yeah.
Calculator. And then the next thing, that IGR will be coming from our individual pocket.
Exactly.
As if you have your children in those schools.
All right.
No, we're bringing in Dr. Philip Hayab now. Dr. Philip Hayab we're talking about back to school. Now, this is occurring against the backdrop of some very uncomfortable data released the other day by UNICEF. UNICEF says that we have now about 20 million out of school children. For many years, we were hovering around 10 or 11 million out of school children. An official of the federal government, one of the federal government's MDAs, was saying, well, the figure is around about 18 million, whatever it is. We know we have now moved from 10 to 18 million. So back to school, will it involve the 18 million, or it also excludes them further? What are the issues that we also need to consider in discussing this back to school phenomenon against the backdrop of what the other guests have said?
Thank you. To start with, I've been a teacher. I've actually taught at the College of Education for 16 years. So I've been involved with education so much in this country. I've taught at the secondary school level and then at the college level. And I work as a teacher trainer. I just came back from Katsina on Friday, where I train teachers in Kapu and Mamapashi local government on the best practices to teach reading. Now, the number of out of school children just in Borno State, as at the last report 1 month ago.
Dr. Hayab, yes. I'm sorry to pause you. Now, our engineers are indicating to us that there is an issue with your microphone. So I know that you have a very important issue to raise, and so we'll give you the opportunity. We'll let the engineers clear up what the glitch is, and then we'll come back. Let's return to Chief Adeolu Ogunbanjo. Chief Adeolu Ogunbanjo, Deputy National President of Parent Teachers Association. Let me raise this issue. We had you as our guest during the last academic session, and we were discussing a very sad development related to bullying and the allegations around the unfortunate death of a student at Dowen College in Lekki Phase 1 in Lagos. Now, when we say back to school and the role of the PTA, do we have the PTA also concerning itself with issues around bullying and what safeguards the institutions they themselves might have, or what experiences the parents might have shared amongst themselves?
Thank you once again. I must say that it depends on the school's management, this bullying stuff, and the way the proprietors or principals are managing the schools. Bullying definitely will never have any place in any school, because it, of course, harps on the emotional intelligence of our children, our students. So, and if you now look at a situation where some students will just gang up and now constitute themselves into, cult, if you a cult gang, and then now start, begin to harass students through bullying and all that. The school management should actually be responsible for that. But again, private schools and public schools are guilty of this. So it depends on how close and the management of the school, how they actually can deploy some teachers, particularly the guidance and counseling teachers, who can now, come in and start counseling these children that, look, forget about all this bullying stuff. It doesn't work. And why should you bully other colleagues, who are or students like themselves? So a lot depends on the management, the school management. Again, when you now look at how do we now cope this? I'm sorry, we need to also engage security, particularly the NSCDC, I've forgotten their full name now. They are popularly called civil defense. So they should actually be in schools, or maybe schools should now engage some of these children, some of these security agencies to ensure that they actually oversee these things. Because when the school management now finds some of these children guilty who are bullying, the school NSCDC official or security agents can now intervene before it becomes something that is uncontrollable.
Thank you. I want to recall what it used to be in my own days in secondary school in terms of bullying, Kingsley. Those days, if you have the senior students then, class 4 and 5 senior students, they could punish a junior student, kneel down for about 10 minutes or thereabout. If the person goes wrong, if the person does it, then it was promoting a kind of discipline. But these days, what we're seeing is bullying people. As a matter of fact, in some levels it becomes heinous crimes, in secondary schools, based on what we have experienced so far in the country. All right, let's bring back Dr. Philip here. Once more, you are leading us into your historical background, with respect to your professional calling, teaching, and all that. So let's hear more from you.
Okay, thank you for having me. Yes, I've been involved in teaching from the year 2005. I just left teaching January this year, but I still teach since I just came back from Katsina, where I trained about 300 teachers from rural schools. So talking about going back,
you were saying what you trained them on.
Okay, it was practical, global practices on how to teach reading. Because I am an English language teacher, so I've been involved in English language teaching, and I supported them in how to build their capacity in the English language. Because in the part of northern Nigeria, some parts of northern Nigeria, Kano, Bauchi, Zamfara, a huge part of northern Nigeria, most of the teachers in rural schools cannot actually communicate effectively in English, whether at the primary or at the secondary school level. In fact, sometimes, with all fairness, even those at the university level are still struggling with language proficiency. Now, so coming back to the issue of out-of-school children, I did some research just last week about out-of-school children and where these out-of-school children are found in Nigeria. Yes, from this 20 million, the chunk of it is going to come from northern Nigeria, beginning with Maiduguri, where the highest about 1.8 million. Then Yobe follows. I think the next would be Zamfara, KB, Katsina, and Sokoto, and parts of Kaduna, because where I come from. Now, there is this feeling that things are okay, because the road from Kaduna to Abuja has been safe for some time, but people, or particularly children in the interior, are not safe. Now, so we now talk about safe schools. So this is one area that the educational system in Nigeria has not really talked about, safe schools. How do we make schools safe? So when you start to talk about safe schools, you are talking about issues of abduction of children from school. Now, these children who have been abducted in the other places, they have very terrible experiences. But the children whose school has not been abducted, they are also afraid. So it touches on their psychological, emotional, cognitive. It actually impedes learning. And we've not talked about this really in the way it should be. Then, like what the proprietors here was talking about, bringing security like police and the civil defense, let me use the word the last speaker called. The problem is, as good as it is, when the police starts to show up in a school, for the children, it might touch on their psyche and affects learning. So the people who are writing to school to say you don't have security, they should also look at it from that angle. I do have problems when I like drive in the mornings and I see children trying to cross the roads on their own. And I ask, where are the road safety corps? Where is the road safety corps in Nigeria? And this is one agency that has a huge number of educated people. I think they should have thought about serving, going out in the morning to just provide services to schools and help those children go to school safely, because also boils back on the issue of safe schools. Now, there is no safety for these kids. The children will have to run. And if children have to run every day, for how many days in a year that they will be lucky? For how many days in 10 years they will be lucky? Some days, some children get crushed by careless drivers because not much has been done. Anywhere there is a school zone, definitely the driving should be 30 kilometers if possible. Yes, and then and there should be a sign. Now, so some schools that are doing well have these signs, and then they have people who help in maybe raising a red flag and all that. But certain schools maybe do not have the wherewithal. So I would say that the question of going back to school is something that we can't do without. Like people have said, the quality of education of any country determines the quality of development, economic, health, or whatever. Now we are losing that, and we are losing it greatly. So, like most of the speakers have noted, the public schools, with all fairness to them, are not doing, they are below the mark, actually. With all the supervision, and there's this I don't care attitude, because, and when you talk to teachers, they'll tell you they're not being well paid. And then when you look at the conditions of the kind of schools they go to, you would also pity them, and you begin to wonder, if you were to be there with them, what would you do? Now, then the understanding of the parents in this community, in the communities where such schools are, particularly with cultural, religious issues or level of ignorance. So there's a lot that I feel we should do in order for this back to school. But to talk about the out of school children, to my mind, these out of school children, the space is not yet open for them to get back to school. The Commissioner of Education in Borno just talked about getting children back to school in the communities. I did a World Bank project in Borno to support basic education subsector in 2019 and 2020. Most of the primary schools that I actually worked were in Maiduguri town, brought in from all other local governments from the villages. Now, if you go to one primary school, the total number of learners will exceed the number of teachers that can actually cater for them. You talk about teacher ratio. If a teacher is going to teach more than 45 students in a class, or pupils in this case, who barely can read, who barely can understand English, maybe it's just going to be an exercise. After school, the bell rings and everybody goes home. So beyond just going back to school, I think government needs to do more than just the lip service we do on TV, in the media. I think it's beyond that. The quality of education is falling and is continuing to dwindle by the day. We need to be realistic and actually curb this manner, because like the speaker from Borno, Zamfara, said, the real deal why we have the insecurity in northern Nigeria has a lot to do with insecurity and lack of access to education by a bulk of the people who have actually become the bandits.
Okay. All right. Thank you. We would have gone to the Commissioner for Education, Borno State, Engineer Lawan Abba Owakibe. But we'll take a short break. When we come back, we'd like you to talk about the issue of out-of-school children, because we know that a number of them should come from Borno State, which is one of the disadvantaged states in education. All right, we'll take a short break now. When we come back, good morning, Nigeria. We'll continue.
All right, welcome back. I say good morning, Nigeria, live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Let's return to our Maiduguri Network Center, where we still have the Commissioner for Education, that's Wakibe. Now, Honorable Wakibe, tell us something about the response to the out-of-school numbers that we just got against the backdrop of back to school that we are discussing, it looks like we still have a lot to grapple with if the UNICEF now says that we have some 20 million out of school children. That's double the numbers that we previously knew. What does this mean to planners and to monitors of the education system in terms of provisioning?
All right, thank you very much. For you to really grab the progress that has been made, let me roll out the figures for you. What has happened previously? Let's go back to history. At the peak of our insurgency between 2014, 15, and part of UNICEF estimated the number of out-of-school children in Borno State at 1,299,000. The World Bank's RPBA, that's Recovery and Peace Building Report, places the number of destroyed school facilities and classrooms at about 5,000. NEMA and our own State Emergency Management Agency put the number of displaced people at about 2 million. Number of orphans, 56,000. Number of widows, 49,000. And then 15 out of our 27 local governments were completely taken over by insurgents, and they destroyed every facility. The first visionary response came from His Excellency Senator Kashim Shettima when he was the governor of Borno State. He decided to build very, very big mega schools within the city and its environs. Mega schools of 100 classroom capacity, 60 classroom capacity to accommodate these 56,000 orphans. So when His Excellency Professor Zulum came in, he consolidated on that, but he took a three-pronged approach. The first is the formal. The formal is the rehabilitation of schools. He rehabilitated, completely rebuilt 108 schools, built 24 mega schools, rehabilitated 600 classrooms, and hundreds of wash and other facilities. And we were able to get students back to school. Now, except for 2 out of our 27 local governments, 25 in all the 25 local government schoolings have been taking place. The second is the non-formal approach. You know, in the core part of northern Nigeria, we have the Sangaya education system. So what we did as a government is to streamline and mainstream the Sangaya system into what we call the higher Islamic schools. The higher Islamic schools are operating a syllabus run by the National Board for Arabic and Islamic Studies. After the Sangaya education, this gives them the kind of formal prerequisite to go into formal schools to learn basic literacy, basic numeracy, and they end up in the fields of arts and law. And that has been in existence for some time. So His Excellency consolidated on that. We are building 6 of this kind of schools out of our mega schools. We have just commissioned one last week where those from the Sangaya system could be mainstreamed into the formal system. Then the third one is the vocational study. You know, insurgency that has lasted since 2014. Those of them that were 4 or 5-year-olds in the camp today are grown-ups and have passed school age. So massive vocational centers were built in several locations to now bring in these students and teach them artisan works and modern skills alongside basic literacy, basic numeracy, financial literacy, so that they could also pick up their lives as artisan workers and choose to pursue their education through the blue-collar job line. In this, by state record, since the intervention started, we have covered at least 600,000. Now, one will argue, if my first figure is 1,229,000, we have covered 600,000, why are we still having 1.8 million people? Well, first of all, these are conservative figures, and we are reviewing it. Secondly, camps, IDP camps, have one major side effect. The birth rates at those camps is exponential, because the last meeting we had, and we were reviewing and reassessing the situation, in our, after closing all camps in Maiduguri, the 19 IDP camps officially existing still have up to 2.2 million people. So the birth rates and population increase in those camps are exponential. But we are concentrating on our return plan. Last 2 weeks, His Excellency had to go to the shores of Lake Chad in a local government, one of our biggest local government called Monguno, and we had to enroll 7,000 orphans into school. There's a big mega school of 60 classroom facility that was built there and is going to house them. All these orphans are given, their guardianship comes from the local government chairman, the House of Assembly members, and the traditional institution. We can't just leave them like that. So the response has been prompt, but you know, a disaster, an emergency cannot qualify as a disaster unless it exceeds your coping capacity. What I have given you as figure is state intervention. Now, there has been also a lot of intervention from local, national, international partners and the federal government of Nigeria through the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and the Northeast Development Commission, amongst others. So these are Herculean problems that is far, far difficult to understand. Some of the situations this emergency has created is not even in educational records. You know, when we were facing the pre-disaster phase, what Zamfara was facing, we had to bring up what is called the learning centers, where 9 to 10 schools are packed in one school, 10 principals in one school, and a lot of matters arise. But now, as we are approaching the stabilization phase, I am happy to report that under the federal government and President Muhammadu Buhari, tranquility has returned virtually to almost all parts of the state. And then we are now concentrating. In the next few weeks, you would see that the governor and the government of Borno State would open more and more rural schools. The issue of teachers and quality of education, you know, emergency measures require emergency approach. So we are approaching a community-based issue where the community are given grants to help in running these schools, because left to government alone, honestly, this has exceeded our capacity. But the efforts are there and we'll surely get to it.
All right, thank you, Honorable Commissioner. As a matter of fact, what I've read out is quite commendable, considering the perspective that you have taken this from and what the governor has been able to do, because Maiduguri, Borno is a special case, and having been able to do the extent of what they have done in such a situation, we commend you. And of course, doing more is only what we're going to ask you to do, because of course, as you said, the challenges are still there, especially in those places where you are quartering those who have lost their homes. Okay, let's also bring in Chairman Zamfara State University of Basic Education, Abubakar Aliyu Maradun. We would like to speak also to the fact that we're talking about out of school children, and of course in Nigeria it is more in the north than any other part of the country, especially Zamfara, which is also part of the epicenter, but is insecurity in the country. So what are you doing to address the issue of out of school children in Zamfara State?
This issue is of serious concern, His Excellency, because you know, Zamfara State before is one of the lowest states as far as education is concerned. And so that is why when His Excellency came, he decided that he has to do something to ensure that before he leaves office, something is done to uplift the standard. And I'm happy to say that from the Lagos, we have been achieving a lot. Let me start with when His Excellency came on board, this state couldn't access its matching grant with BEF for 2017, 2018, 2019. Because even if we know we have much children out of school, because the census made earlier, we have about over 800,000 children that are out of school. And without infrastructure, you have nowhere to put in these children. So that is why His Excellency decided to pay all the counterpart funding for 2017, 2018, and 2019. And that is what gave us the opportunity to assess our merchandise for this year and then immediately get into action. And I can tell you now, we constructed more than 1,200 classrooms and equipment with adequate furniture. We renovated more than 600 classrooms and equipment with modern furniture. We provided boreholes, ICT centers, and what. All right, coming to the question of out-of-school children, which is very serious, because it is the mandate of the government to provide education for any child that's supposed to go to school. So that's why it is of serious concern. And this government starts by getting advocacy to all our nooks and crannies of the state. We started with the traditional rulers because we know they are the best person that will give us support to ensure that all our children are back to school. We enrollment campaign and all that stuff. And we also used the ENSA program that was brought in to help states like Zamfara that have very much out-of-school children. I can tell you, through the ENSA program, which more than 145,000 children.
Okay, thank you very much, Chairman of Zamfara Subeb. That's Aliu Maradun. Very quickly, we'll come back to the studios where we have three guests. I want to throw in this question about teachers' welfare. Yes, we can talk about back to school if the teachers do not feel comfortable, because we're talking about inflationary pressures. Teachers are not insulated from these inflationary pressures. We all go to the same market. I'm just wondering if you can take this one after the other, but very quickly. Let's begin with the PTA. Some persons say in the private schools will raise the issue of privity of contract. Oh, you are employed by the school authorities. They are the ones who pay you. But you know, your children and wards are under the care of these teachers. And if their welfare is below par, they are unlikely to put in their best. What is it that PTAs can and should do in terms of teacher welfare enhancement? Barrister Koje, very quickly before we bring in Mr.
Thank you. The school, to my knowledge, for instance, you're talking of privity of contract. We also acknowledge that if the remuneration is not worthy, so to speak, they are not tempted to put in their best, the teachers. And I know that in some private schools, this is of serious importance to them, and the teachers they do the best within their means to ensure the teachers are well remunerated. Now, considering the issue of inflation and the increment of school fees, these are part of the factors. One of the major reasons they give is that they want to be able to maintain standard. And maintaining that standard means you have to take care of your teachers. So now, concerning my particular school now, which I'm executive, what we identified this problem and what the PTA on its own have the initiative to, at the end of the year, there is an incentive for the teachers. Why the school is encouraged as well, because part of the reason, as I said, for the increment is to enhance the welfare of the teachers. So the school fees have been increased slightly, so to speak, where there are not some of the elitist private schools who can astronomically increase their fees. So I believe provision will be made. No, I expect that the teachers, in the circumstances, they will understand because they are part and parcel of the system of the inflation trend. But when you see that effort is being made to alleviate or reduce your hardship, I believe it will be something that will trigger some joy or happiness to them.
Mrs. Bankole.
Yeah, teachers' welfare is critical. And not from the commissioner in Borno explaining that even the quality of teachers is critical. You know, we need to also know that apart from the welfare, we need to have consistent, continuous teacher development for our teachers, for them to be, because it's possible for someone to have, I always emphasize certification above certification, because we know what some of our certificates, how some people get their certificate nowadays, but the continuous teacher development. And in a way, it's an incentive to some teachers. When they see opportunity for them to grow in their career, they are always glad to see that, which I know a number of private schools do. And then remuneration, yes. But of course, it's critical to also know that it's going to be based, remuneration cannot be the same across schools. There are several categories. In FCT, I give about 4 categories. But generally, over 2,000 of the 3,000 schools I mentioned are local schools that charge between 20 naira per day to like 40, 50,000 naira per term. And those ones, you know, what they will pay their teachers will be different. There are so many private schools also that are paying way ahead beyond what the government schools are paying teachers. So, you know, we need to keep encouraging ourselves and, you know, paying as much as we can. And the teachers needs to understand. Yeah.
I left the teaching job because I wasn't paid well. That's the truth. And it is sad, because if teaching is that which I breathe, I wake up with it, I breathe with it. I regret every day that I'm not in the classroom. But when you work, and then it is not commiserable to what you earned, it kills the very spirit that will lead you to the classroom and to put in your best. For schools that don't pay well, they cannot retain the best teachers. They cannot retain them because the best teachers will always be on the flight for good salaries. So, and that is one of the reasons that the quality of education in this country will continue to deplete, because once you can't keep the best teachers in your school, you cannot deliver more than what you know.
Okay, thank you. You know, those days, you know, teachers were relegated to the background. You know, they say, teacher, your reward is in heaven and all of that. And I recall vividly that sometime when government decided to give car loans to teachers those days, they gave them the cheapest ladder. There was one car product then from Russia that was highly celebrated. They were giving ladder to. It was so annoying. The people who groomed us, all of us.
The advertisement for ladder at that time was that a new breed in elegance and economy.
So, and they were just what was given to the headmasters then, and there was jubilation all over the country. It's not good, please. We should do the right thing, as you people have spoken this morning.
Yeah, I know we're going to sign off our guests right now because we're pressed for time. But the Commissioner for Education in Borno also talked about one of the consequences of the insurgency, IDP camps, and the population bulge. I was just wondering how much family planning goes on in the IDP centers. We're not saying go to the extreme, but what family planning commodities are available in those centers? Because if you continue to have a population bulge, even amongst that kind of category, then it's a challenge, Kira.
Well, if you tell an average Nigerian to control his birth rate, he will argue with you that God gives children and God also brings money to children.
But you are controlling yours.
Of course.
No, why are you?
Because I've chosen to do that. You know, Africa generally, that's what we do. All right, you know, in my place those days, if you give a birth to about 9 children, the woman, they will kill a cow for you. You know, it's working. You know, it's a big family. She delivered 9 children.
And when the time comes, after giving you the cow, now we are discussing school fees and other things. Would they also pay cow for you to pay the school fees?
All right, Dr. Philip Hayab, educationist and peace advocate. I'd like to thank you for coming here today on Good Morning Nigeria. Mrs. Olusola Bankole, Director, the Bankies Private School, Abuja. Thank you also for sharing your views. I'd like to know your school and know what I can. Since you say we can pay 10,000, 20,000, we'll work that out, you know, so the possibility. All right. We also had tuition. Okay, tuition only.
That's like saying liquid content.
Then there are other charges.
You said liquid content only.
Okay. Engineer Lan Abba Owakibe, Commissioner for Education, Borno State. Thank you. You are doing well. We appreciate what you have told us this morning. Thank you indeed for being part of the show this morning. All right, and from Gusau, we had Abubakar Aliyu Maradun, Executive Chairman, Zamfara State Universal Basic Education Board. We also thank you for making efforts to identify the program today. And we also would like to thank Chief Adulu Gubanjo, Deputy National President, National Parents Teachers Association of Nigeria, NAPTAN. Thank you all for being here today.
And that's it for us on Good Morning Nigeria. Join us again tomorrow, same time, 7 o'clock, for a fresh package of your program. I'm Kingsley Osadolon, saying have a nice day.
I am Kirian. I'll see you again tomorrow.